Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you. And in this one, I'm just going to address a couple of similar questions that were posted to video comments in the last week or so, both of which deal with how do you determine if an item is available for sale in a given community? How do you determine if a player can purchase a certain thing that they want? And how does this all work? What are the mechanics involved? And players wishing to purchase some new magic items with their hard-earned gold. And I'm just going to say up front that there's not a whole lot of really concrete guidance. A lot of this is left up to the GM to make decisions and interpretations for what makes sense for their game and the kind of tone they want to strike and where in their world this particular proposed purchase is going to take place and so on. But there is some guidance in the GM core book, and really comes down to two major considerations and a handful of minor considerations. So the major considerations are going to be settlement level and rarity. So the general rule of thumb is if a player wishes to purchase an item that is of an item level equal to or lower than the settlement level of the place that they're wanting to purchase this, and it is common rarity, then there's a pretty good chance they're going to be able to source and purchase that item. It's not entirely fair to say that it's a guarantee because there are a couple of things we'll talk about in just a minute. But the sort of first layer or first criteria you should be thinking about is what is the item level compared to the settlement level, and what is its rarity. If it is of an item level equal to or lesser than the settlement level and it is common rarity, good chance they're going to be able to find it somewhere in that settlement and purchase it. Now, the reason why I say that it's not a guarantee that it's going to be available there is because there is a piece of guidance that's provided in GM Core and was previously in the Game Mastery Guide that I think a lot of people overlook, and that is that there is a cap placed on the highest level items, the number of highest level items available in any given settlement. So it's not like if you walk into a sixth level city that literally every single common rarity magic item of sixth level or lower is sitting on store shelves waiting for you to buy them. What it does, what the guidance is that you take a look at the party treasure table that is on page 59 of GM Core, and you take one level lower than the settlement's level, and that tells you how many of the highest level items are available in that settlement. So if you are in a sixth level city, you look at the column for permanent magic items and consumable items, and you look at fifth level because that's one less than the settlement level, and it says sixth level 2 and fifth level 2 for permanent items. That means not every sixth level common rarity magic item and fifth level common rarity magic item is going to be available for sale in this community. It means two sixth level items are going to be available and two fifth level items are. And then at level 4 and below, those are considered so insignificant that it should be easy to find and source one of those items in the settlement. But you are placing limits on the highest level items, the number of highest level items available in each settlement. Now, generally, even though they refer to this table, most of the time it's going to work out as being any settlement has at most two items of its settlement level, two items of its level -1 for permanent items, and for consumables, there's another layer that goes down 3 levels or 2 levels below the settlement level and is capped at two consumable items of that level as well. So that might make it easier than referring to this table all the time. Now, there are some other things to consider. What if the item that you're wanting to find is not common rarity? The book doesn't provide hard uh, hard mechanics for finding items that are not common. Again, this is going to be up to the GM, but the guidance that they do give you is that common rarity items are typically gated behind something. They might be gated behind a certain ancestry that is fond of making these items. They could be gated behind belonging to a specific faction. They could be gated behind a particular nationality. They could be gated behind a lore skill. Maybe only people who are expert level lore in a particular magical tradition would even know that such a thing exists, and would have an ability to find and source those particular items. But when you think about the access requirements to these uncommon items, is might be a good guideline to not just think about does the player's character meet an access requirement, or does the settlement itself meet that requirement? So, if you have an elven character and they are proficient with elven martial weapons and they want to go by a +1 striking elven curved blade, if they're in a predominantly human settlement, this might be considered, or probably would be considered, an uncommon item, but they might be able to rely on their familiarity to start conversations, to find an elven bartender who was a retired adventurer and talk to them and say, "Hey, can I buy that blade off you?" Something like that. It's just not going to be uncommon items are just not going to be freely available typically to everybody in a settlement unless the settlement itself meets the criteria for the access. So if this was a predominantly elven community, then elven carved blades are probably available at every blacksmith. So when you think about these access requirements or access guidelines for uncommon items, be sure to look at it from both perspectives, the individual and but also the community itself. What makes sense that they would have access to? There is no rule that says you, in order to source an uncommon item, you have to pass a gather information skill check or a lore score skill check of a DC equal to the item level of the item and so on and so forth. If a GMs will want to run a game that way, perfectly welcome, well within your rights. And I have seen online some people say that they do similar things, but just understand that is not a official rule that is coded into the DNA of Pathfinder Second Edition, the way systems like that are coded into uh, other role playing games. Now, when we talk about rare or even unique items, then the criteria to source and find and purchase these things get even steeper. So, common items, if it's your if it's common rarity and you're at the settlement level or lower for the item level, then you have a pretty good chance of finding it. Uncommon, you're going to have some sort of special access, jump through some minor hoops, but when we get into rare, these are going to be items that ideally should be tied into the narrative of the game. Very, very infrequently, I almost said very rarely, I guess very infrequently, should a person just be able to go into a settlement and just buy a rare item unless there's special circumstances. If a player says that they're looking for a particular rare item, either tie that into the narrative, tie that in the story, give them a quest that they have to complete to get access to that item, something like that. It shouldn't Getting a rare item should be a major event. It shouldn't be a purely transactional event the way that purchasing common items and even some uncommon items would be. Now, some of the other little considerations you might want to think about is the player's level. If the player's character level is higher than the settlement level, then they might have a degree of fame, reputation, influence in that community that could that could be used to give a narrative explanation as to why people in that community are more likely to part with things and sell them something of a higher level than they normally would, which could be justification for why a 10th level character is able to source a 7th level magic item in a 6th level settlement, something of that sort. And also keep in mind that when the book talks about these rules, they're referring to a very standard sort of generic general community settlement, and it's up to you as the GM to apply modifications to what's available there according to, like, what's their trade, what are their major imports and exports, where are they located, things of that nature. So as a GM, you very much should be willing to bend some of these rules a little bit in favor of what you envision would make sense for each of those communities. As far as official guidance that I've seen in the book, that pretty much covers all the official guidance. But there's probably a few other lingering questions that might be worthwhile just taking a look at. Just keep in mind from here on out, we're not talking about official game rules or official guidance to the rules. This is mostly my opinion, my take, and perhaps some things I've seen discussed online as well as work for other people. So, the number one question after hearing that you're capped at only 2 magic items of the settlement level and 2 magic items of the settlement level -1 is, how do you determine what those items are? So, again, no official guidance for this, but could just be the GM. GM could just say, you know what, I think this item and this item makes sense. That's what they're going to be. It could be items that are thematically tied to the settlement. This is a traditionally dwarven settlement, so I'm going to make sure that uh, that the 2 settlement level equaled items are items that have the dwarven trait because they're more likely to be there. You could also just make it easy. These are often very transactional moments. Like I said, as long as it's not like a rare item, it probably isn't something that's really tightly integrated into the story. This is just so transactional. Just have the players decide. It could be the first 2 items that the players ask for. Those just happen to be the items, or it could be have your players make their wish list, and then when they have their wish list, you look at it and you say, okay, you've selected 4 6th level items, and this is a 6th level settlement. They're only going to have 2 of these. Now, which of these 2 do you want? And put it into their hands. Now, I agree, not entirely realistic and may grate a little bit on immersions just to say, hey, whatever, the 2 items that you wanted, they happen to be here. But again, I personally, in my games, find these moments to be very transactional in nature. I think the number one barrier to prevent players from just getting whatever they want whenever they want is the cost of the items, and frankly, a lot of times they can't afford whatever would be an equal level of that settlement unless they're higher level characters visiting a lower level settlement. Um, so if it's common already, I'm usually cool with just letting them buy whatever and not worry about the caps as long as they get the money for it. But again, those caps are the official guidance. Another thing that you could do to determine what those limited items are in a community is to use some kind of random loot generator. There's several online. I do not know them well enough to really endorse any of them and say that I use them because I don't know, like, how vast their loot tables are and how rarity influences their results and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to name any, but if you go into Google and you just type Pathfinder Second Edition, loot tables, random loot generator, something like that, you'll find them. So another question that might come up that's not addressed in the rules is, when do these 2 limited items per level of the settlements level and the level beneath it, when do those get refreshed? So if my players go in and they buy all 4 of those limited items in the settlement, when can they come back and have the store shelves refilled, so to speak, and buy more. No guidance to that. I think easy recommendations would be after a major story milestone, they would have more items available for sale within the settlement. Or after a significant amount of downtime, the next time the players have a week of downtime, then that might be an opportunity to sort of refresh what is available and let them do some more higher level shopping in that community. Another question that comes up is like, where are these things sold? And like one of the comments that kind of generated this video was one of the comments was very tongue in cheek, but was like, "Do you just walk into Runes or Us to buy a rune?" And the answer to that is maybe. Probably not literally Runes R Us, but high level settlements. I mean, like Galarian in the Pathfinder setting is a high fantasy setting. It's a high magic fantasy setting, and in higher level settlements, your larger cities and metropolises, there certainly are businesses that deal probably solely in the purchase and sell and trade of magical items. Now is it going to have signs as literally Runes are us? Probably not, but it could be uh Melik's runes and magical curiosities, something like that, where you would go in and you would purchase your magic runes. Smaller settlements probably don't have enough magic trade business to necessitate an entire magic shop, but there's other ways to source magic items in even the smaller villages and so forth. uh, you might have to talk to the local wizard and see what they've got in their possession. Could find again former adventurers who have retired to the community and have pieces of gear that they're willing to part with. It could be blacksmiths, armor smiths, any kind of tradesperson or guild would be a good place to go to source anything that they would be able to craft. And so there certainly is an area within the narrative where you would go to so-called magic shops, and there's other settings where either because of the size of the settlement or because of the culture and nationality wouldn't do that. Um, it's also worth to keep in mind that when they talk about what's available, they're talking about what's available across the entire settlement, not what's available at any one given store. So it's not like you walk into one store and they've got every common rarity magic item of level 1 to level 4, and then 2 level 5s and 2 level 6s. It's in that entire city. Those items can be found spread out wherever makes the most logical sense. Now, for me in my games, for whatever it's worth, I tend to use churches as as a major resource for the buying and selling and trade of magic items, especially the churches of Abadar and Nethys. Uh, these are places that are going to have an interest in buying magic items, which in general you sell players sell at 50%. Um, and there's also a general cap that you shouldn't be selling items of a higher settlement level than the settlements level, because there's not people in that settlement who a 7th level settlement doesn't have the funds to buy 15th level magical items from players. But anyway, I use churches. I think Abadar is always interested in trade and making money, and also they've got, especially in their cities, they got vaults. So you would think things that are as valuable as magical items aren't just sitting on store shelves anyway. They're in a vault somewhere. And Nethys has an interest in magic. So I use churches often to manage the buying and selling and trade of magical items. Again, that's just me. What I do with my games. There's nothing official in the rules about that. Um, Another question. I guess I kind of touched on this a little bit already, which was, are there any mechanics involved in finding a seller? So if you want to purchase that uncommon rarity item, or you want to try to source something that is one level higher then the settlement's level and you're a higher level character. What are the rules to do that? There's really not a lot of hard rules to do this. It's going to be up to the GM to decide, how crunchy and how mechanical they want to get. Gather information skill checks could be used. Lore skill checks could be used. Modify those according to rarity. But if you do that, I would advise that you as the GM need to decide, is this something that actually exists in this settlement? And if they pass the skill checks, then they're able to track down the person who has that item. And not turn this into, if you pass the skill check, that item magically is going to be available for sale in the community. I know it can be a downer to pass a skill check and then say, despite your best efforts, you're not able to source that here. But you don't want to get into a situation where a player that has a really high skill bonus and or really good luck with the dice is able to source just like anything. I would view this like a perception check. You roll really high on a perception check, and if there's a goblin hiding in the corner, you spot them. But if there's not a goblin hiding in the corner, it doesn't matter how high you roll on a perception check, you don't see anything there, right? Same thing with using gather information and lore checks to track down and source. Decide, does this actually exist in the community? And if so, use those skills to perceive it, to find it. And not to determine whether or not a rare magical item is available. So that covers all of the basic general information with regards to purchasing magical items in a settlement. To sum up, use rarity, use settlement level compared to the item level. If the item level is common rarity and of a level equal to or lower than the settlement, there's a good chance it's going to be there. And the book advises placing a cap on 2 permanent magical items of the settlement's level and 2 magical items that is 1 level beneath the settlement's level. And then uncommon items could be available if you have access to them by meeting some other requirement or if the GM wishes. And rare magical items, you really want to have a narrative significance. So tie those into the story, assign a quest to find them, something of that sort. If you have any questions about the purchasing of magical items in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, or if you have any insight on any rules that I may have missed, please leave those in the comments below. And as always, I want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that be by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, buying a super thanks. I really appreciate everything you folks do to support me. With that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.